was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I want to say this before we go further. This is my favorite time of the year, the blessed day it is, and I want to say thank you for giving me your time, because you did not have to spend your time with me. You could have spent your time watching sports, doing foolishness, or all that other stuff, or even just doing something else. But you chose to give me a little bit of your time today, and for that, I'm humbled. Therefore, I'm going to try to do my best to explain issues to you. Sometimes it might hurt you a little bit, but it's for your best. You know, sometimes when your parents scold you or discipline you, or your brother, your big brother, or your big sister discipline you or scold you, sometimes it hurts your feelings. But as you grow older, you realize that it was for your benefit and your security. Sometimes we have to do that here. All right. So I want to shout out to Joel Bradford in the building. Shout out to Perseverance Chameleon in the building. Shout out to everybody who's joining us and who will join us. And let's jump right into the topics, because it's been a good while coming. I had a lot of things going on in the background. I have some tremendous shows coming up for you guys with some tremendous guests. I've been working full steam behind closed doors, and also been handling some family issues. And finally, my wife is back home. She was out on her job or whatever, and she's back. So now she can help me at the house a little bit. So everybody, again, thank you so much. Give a shout out to the greatest woman to ever live, my mother, for watching. I love your mom more than life. Thank you so much for teaching me, raising me, disciplining me. You know, every now and then you had to give me a 2-piece to the kidneys when I got out of line. I appreciate that. So everybody, listen. Shout out to Shelly is in the building. Now we got to address some things, okay? Because I had a hard time getting on. The internet started messing up about 15 or 20 minutes before the show started. I had to get my son in here. All of the computers were going crazy or whatever, and my son, the tech he is, got us on the air. So check this out. There's a lot going on, and we're going to address the Ukrainian situation. We're going to address the pivot to Asia. But I want to go back to something with Mr. Trump. And just like I stayed on Biden's neck, just like I stayed on Obama's neck, I'm not going to let anybody just gallop through here without calling the ace a ace and a spade, okay? So recently with the cancellation of DEI, what is it? Diversity, equality, and inclusion, I believe that was. Trump says that there will be it no more. Then you had the newly formed war secretary coming out saying the same thing, and it said that now people will be judged on the merits, right? And no skating by the merits. That's what they said. All right. So now I want to go to something. Let's see if the word hold true, or is this something just to appease some of their base, right? And pretend like, hey, we're only going to hire people on their merits. Because remember, everybody that has been put into key positions in the Trump administrations are multi-billionaires or millionaires, right? And they've made their money through DEI. They have been given a leg up through connections, through families, through the partying that they have with other people. So let us not push that to the side, because that's very important when we talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I'm not for anybody being promoted without having the qualifications, okay? But I'm just saying, when we look at this thing, we have to call it like it is. How do you think Trump was able to get all of those loans that he got going bankrupt after bankruptcy after bankruptcy. It's because of the elbows that he rubbed. It's because of the connections that he had, right? It wasn't because he started broke and built himself up. His father and the people that was connected with the Nostradamus and all of those people who clicked up with millionaires and billionaires helped him like that, right? It didn't just happen out the blue. The same with the FBI secretary that's confirmed. The same with the war secretary. The same with the Secretary of State. And we can go on and on and on and on and on. The very proponents for removing DEI, okay? So I want to say something. He said that from this point on, no one else will be put in because of that, and they will only be judged by the merits. Let's go to something real quick. I did an article on Patreon. All right, I'm not going to read the article, but I'm going to read this little section out of it, okay? Because there's something important to what he did by the removal of the former Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown Jr. Right, and I'm not do I care one way or the other about C.Q. Brown Jr.? I think he was a pawn and he was a shield for empire. So don't think that I'm just on his side because he is black or whatever. But I am going to point out some hypocrisy, okay? I'm going to do that. I'm a straight shooter, and I'm going to point out this hypocrisy. And you can deal with it whichever way you want to. But I'm going to call it out, okay? Let's go to this article. So now, after Trump, his war secretary, his Secretary of State openly stated that from this point on, you will only be judged by the merits of your qualifications. They fired C.Q. Brown, right? C.Q. Brown Jr. was dismissed as the highest military officer of the land, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm not going to tell you the real reason why. You have to go to Patreon to read the real reason why he was dismissed, okay? On that article. But I'll give you something in the article. Now, this is from Trump himself, okay? All right, let's see if C.Q. Brown Jr. was qualified for the position that he was in, all right? Or is this a good old boys club now? All right, we're going to go from President Donald Trump's own description of C.Q. Brown Jr., okay? It says, I want to thank General Charles C.Q. Brown for his over 40 years of service to our country, including as our current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Listen to what he says. He is a fine gentleman and an outstanding leader, and I wish a great future for him and his family. So if he is a fine gentleman, and then he is an outstanding leader, then why was this leader removed for no apparent reason? Because according to Trump, he was qualified. According to the Secretary of State, and according to the War Secretary, C.Q. Brown was qualified. He was more than qualified. So why would he be removed? Huh? If that is what you say, that the only positions will be filled by people who are qualified. Huh? And if this man was qualified and you cannot produce why he should have been removed, people start then thinking maybe he was removed because he was not a part of the good old boys club. It's right there. I read you what Trump said himself. So I have to point this out at the beginning because there's going to be a lot of stuff we point out. The hypocrisy. I continue to tell you, for those of you who believe that this administration is way different than the Biden administration, you're fooling yourself. These are two. I had a show called Two Sides of the Same Con, C-O-N. And in that show, I talked about the hypocrisy of and the changing of the guard for each administration and how they continue to push a narrative and how they continue to push a policy, even while talking to their own different bases. Why? Because this is what they have to do to keep the people pacified, to keep the people looking at enemies outside of who they are. Because these people are fleecing the people. All of them. Do you actually believe, what is his name? The racist guy, the billionaire, the multi-billionaire, that owns Twitter, Elon Musk. Do you actually believe that Elon Musk is trying to root out crime when his family became multi-billionaires because of their communication and because their connections with the CIA and all of the alphabet intelligence agencies? Huh? And do you actually believe that you can attain that much wealth without compromising yourself in some way to the alphabet agencies? Huh? If you don't compromise yourself so they can have something on you, there is no way possible that they will allow you to ascend to such heights, because you'll be out of their control. We have to get out of this make-believe world that, oh, just because he's speaking to my heart, that he is for me. Oh, just because he's making and I would say superficial policy changes, that he is trying to uproot the deep state. I did a show with my colleague Brian Berletic. I did a couple of them, and he and I talked about this stuff. And there's a clip of one of the shows called Trump Drains, I believe it's called Trump Drains the Swamp While Leaving the Snakes and Gators. And we're talking about, yes, he is taking a stand, and it looks as though he's trying to deal with corruption. And it looks like he's trying to reel in all of this stuff. But if one peel behind those layers of onion, you'll see that it smells just like the top layer. If you peel back the layers of the onion, you'll see that the man holding the onion, that's doing the peeling, smells just like the onion he's peeling. You understand me? So for you to believe that actual change is underway, which there is some change, but I'm talking about a change to uproot and remove the deep state, you're fooling yourself. How is it that the person that was made rich, right, and was afforded all kinds of luxuries by his connections with the deep state would then go and uproot that which he benefited from the most? Do you believe that I can default on multiple loans, billions of dollars of loans, and continue to get loans, continue to be able to buy property, to be able to continue to be afforded a line of credit? Do you believe that? If we do away with the DEI, do you believe that I can do that? Look at me. Let's be real. Look at me. Do you believe that I would be afforded the same? And if I'm not afforded the same, why? Is it color? I don't know. Is it connections? Huh? Man, let's talk. Okay? I see everybody in the chat. Let me go to the chat real quick because I want to address a few things. I know we don't have a whole bunch of time, but let's go to some. Let me read. Let me scroll down. This thing is moving so fast, everybody. Perseverance Committee says, salute Rashid, glad to be here on time for a change. Okay, let's see. Salute to you, Joel. Yeah. Shelly's in the building. Let's see. Let's go down. Max Sparks is in the building. Desert Mansions is in the building. I respect the no Gallup rule. Let's see. I'm doing pretty good, Ping One. How about yourself? I'm doing pretty good. Ping One says no more white privilege too. Whoop. Cosmo Ray says U.S. War Department Pete Hegseth is the 29th Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War. There's nothing about America's policy that is in defense. You mean to tell me 900 military bases? And as I told you guys who've been watching this show for the longest, I was watching these years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but I don't know if it was right before the pandemic or right after the pandemic. But I was watching a congressional hearing, and they had some of the top military guys there, and they were talking about with all of the outposts and all of the training facilities and all of the what they call it, logistic hubs and all of that stuff. The United States had roughly over 5,000 hubs or bases around the globe. Roughly over 5,000. How is that for defense? When everybody talks about sovereignty, how is that not an encroachment on sovereignty? Because if someone were to ask any U.S. Citizen, would you allow a base from Arabia to be put here? Would you allow a base from Spain to be put here? Would you allow a base from China to be put here or from Vietnam to be put here? They would say, no, this would be an affront to U.S. sovereignty, and we will not go for that. Well, then, if that is the case, why are you going for them to put U.S. bases in other people's nations? And why isn't that an affront to their sovereignty? Because we have this thing called exceptionalism in our head, that it's okay for the United States to do it. It's okay for Britain, Canada, and the Western Anglo nations to do it. That's not an affront to sovereignty and a pusher of instability around the globe. But how dare China come and train on U.S. soil? It's an invasion of the Chinese. The hypocrisy. I told you what we see in government, the craziness and the hypocrisy also seeps down into the masses of the people because they're indoctrinated with U.S. propaganda. If it's an affront to U.S. sovereignty, you're telling me it's not an affront to Lagos or the Gambia sovereignty? It's not an affront to Bolivia's sovereignty. It's not an affront to German sovereignty, even though Germany has a lot of bases in Africa that they don't tell you about. It's not an affront to those Pacific Island sovereignty. It's only an affront to a Western nation. Man, stop this. Stop playing with me with this foolishness. All right? Incognito says, let me scroll down to put this on the screen. Hold on, Incognito, because one monitor is showing me something else and it's jumping on this monitor. Hold on one second. Ghost 777, shout out to you. Let's see. Yeah, good to see you again, Incognito. I'm working behind the scenes trying to get some dates scheduled. And besides that, I had a lot going on. You know, my daughter was in the hospital. Two of my daughters had to go to the hospital at different times, and I had to be there because my wife wasn't here at the time. Okay, so I had to handle that. Let's see. Salute the Medi in the building. Incognito says this right here. Because our bases are happy bases, like little Disneylands. Shout out to Vera in the building. All right. Oh, man. I'm going to leave that one up for a second. I like that one. So, look, there is something I wanted to. Let me get back to something real quick. There's something I wanted to show you guys. All right. I got it. So, I have heard a lot of the alternative media tuck tail on Ukraine. And now everything is Zelensky's fault. I told you guys that was coming, didn't it? I told you guys a long time that's coming. When America starts pointing to Zelensky, the alternative media is going to start pointing to Zelensky. He's irrational. He's irrational. He's brash. He's arrogant. He's such and such. But he's America's puppet. He's Britain's puppet. He's NATO's puppet. Why are we leaving that out? Who allowed him to come to power? Who sustained him in power? Who formulated the policies that Ukraine enacted? Who gave him the weapons? Who gave him the money? His security are British special forces. Let me say that again. His security were British special forces. You know, like the president has the Secret Service. Zelensky was being protected by British special forces. And you telling me the Brits and the U.S. has no leverage over him? And he can just freely formulate policy outside of their dictates? Oh, boy, I tell you what. Whatever you puffing on, whatever you drinking, you need to bottle it, get it approved, and then sell it, because you'll make billions, okay? Seriously. So, and Perseverance Chameleon says, USA and UK aid paid for Zelensky. Absolutely. Absolutely. So now everybody's pointing at Zelensky. Oh, he wants more weapons. Oh, Zelensky, he's irrational. Oh, he doesn't want to sign this. Oh, he doesn't want to do. I'm telling you guys, listen, these are head fakes. These are head fakes for you. Don't believe the hype. All of this is Walt Disney. This is make-believe. This is make-believe. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's go back to something old. Let me see if I still have this up here. Let's go back to something old real quick. I want to show you something. Please let me still have that up here. I may have taken it down after using it. Hold on one second, everybody. Let me see if I got that up here. I kept it up here for a long time, and after I used it, I said, you know what? I'm just going to take it down. Anyway, I must have deleted it. But anyway, remember, they said that Zelensky was a U.S. puppet. I played the clips multiple times. That he was a puppet. Now, tell me this. When in history? Listen to me good. So we're going to have history as our backer, okay? And history best rewards those who do what? Who do the research of it, right? We have lived decades, some of us, and we have seen the U.S. empire, the British empire, prop up puppets. And when the puppets are used up, they become tyrants and dictators, right? They are discarded like used toilet paper, right? Are we not watching that? Now, here, when in history has America and Britain ever funded a puppet, a leader of a government, to the tune of 90+% of the entire government's budget and almost all of its weapons, and allowed for that puppet and that puppet's government to act independently from what they say? I'll wait. When has that happened? And you're telling me they're allowing Zelensky to do it? Huh? You really want me to believe that? See, what we're hearing in the media is a justification for Russia. I mean, for Trump. You understand? That's what you're hearing. Because Trump now has turned and said negative things about Zelensky, but he hasn't said that he would stop funding the war. As a matter of fact, he said if they signed, I was just looking at something. He said if they sign such and such, that means they'll continue to get weapons from us, and we'll continue to give them intelligence until Russia signs a peace agreement. That doesn't sound like a person that's after peace, does it? Well, Trump may be positioning himself for a grand bargain. But does that sound like peace? I didn't ask you, was he positioning himself for a grand bargain? I asked you, does that sound like a peacemaker? But what it does sound like is that America can turn on and off the taps to Zelensky when they choose to. So that means if they can do that with the military aid, they can also do that financially. And if they do that financially, he's dead, right? He's gone. And you're telling me they have the reins of the purse and the reins of the gun, and they have special forces embedded in his intelligence services, all of his special forces in the military, and even guarding him. And he is allowed to make independent policies from the United States. Which one of you guys believe that? I'm asking. Which one of you guys believe that? When has Britain allowed that? When has the United States allowed that? And you're telling me this guy who is in a more weak and feeble position as a leader than Saddam Hussein was is being allowed to do so? Huh? Because even at Saddam Hussein's weakest, he was not surrounded by British and U.S. special forces. And you're telling me that this guy who is surrounded by him is able to buck up against the people who pay the special forces, who give the directives and the orders to the special forces? Okay, all right. I'll buy that. Okay. If you believe that, all right. See, this is not adding up. And I've watched, and I've given the benefit of the doubt to a lot of them. Zelensky is such and such. He keeps begging for weapons. You are the one who promised him weapons. right? For as long as it takes, for whatever they need to fight for democracy, right? Right? And now he's begging for weapons. He's irrational. He needs money. You said you would give it to him. This man has sacrificed 1 million people of his country because you said that you would go to bat for him. I'm not defending Zelensky, right? But what I'm doing is I'm showing you the hypocrisy of not only the Western leadership in the mainstream media, but a lot of the so-called alternative media. How soon we forget that America and Britain and NATO promised for as long as it takes, for whatever they need, we'll give to them, right? You don't think, now listen, he was a fool to put himself in that position because he knew, he should have known what America and Britain and the Western nations do when they are done, when the utility of their puppet is used up. It's too many examples the world over for him not to have known that. So we'll say he's a fool. He's insane for that. But don't call him insane and being a fool for demanding from the West what the West promised him that they would give him. After this man has sacrificed over 1 million of his people and tens of millions of people have fled his country and his country is being destroyed because the U.S. and the West had an ulterior motive as to pull Ukraine into their sphere of influence, to use it as a battering ram against Russia, to not only weaken Russia, but then eventually balkanize Russia and then take over Russia's resources. Because remember, Hillary Clinton said that it is not fair and it is not right that Russia should have so much and so many resources at its disposal, that we should have them. That's what Hillary Clinton said, right? Man, listen to me good. You don't think this stuff is America's fault because, or Americans want peace. Trump wants peace. Don't forget that Trump was the one that armed them with the tank weapons. Don't forget that Trump was the one who upped the funding for Ukrainian soldiers training in his first administration. Don't forget that it was Trump who gave him political backing when he knew that what they were going to do against Russia, because he wasn't the president and did not know. Okay? Two sides of the same coin. And they're conning and gaming you. On the streets, we call it gaming. When a person tries to hustle, that's what the Western governments are doing to the masses of the people. They're hustling you through their moles and media and through their propaganda organs and mainstream media. Don't let these people fool you. You don't believe me? All right, let's go to something then. Because you know I keep receipts. All right? I keep receipts. So remember that the United States invested $5 billion in the overthrow of the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych. When one election didn't go right, they brought out, what is her name? Tymoshenko. I think that's her name. Tymoshenko of the Orange Revolution. They wanted to do a redo of the elections. And then when that didn't go right and he won again, they forced him to make her a prime minister in a government with the guy who was poisoned by the West and blamed it on Russia. All right? And when Viktor Yanukovych won the presidency again, they bribed him. But he wasn't too sure about going to the West. So he at the last minute he paused the deal with the West, and that was enough to cause them to overthrow him. They tried to kill him. People forget this part. Not only did they overthrow his government, they tried to kill him, his family, and his administration. Sounds familiar? Remember when they tried to do that with Erdogan in Turkey? Sounds familiar, right? Man, you guys don't let these people pull this on you. So listen, we keep talking about Ukraine is collapsing and Zelensky is irrational and detached from reality. And they act like that prior to him coming to office, that it was all roses and sunshine. Well, we're going to take a trip down memory lane of who caused this unraveling of Ukraine. All right? Take this 2 minutes and 29 seconds.
When you're a high-ranking official talking about diplomatic efforts in Ukraine, the last thing you want to do is drop your guard.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, the EU.
But that is exactly what reports.
I'm going to replay that. Boom, man. I wanted to get to a point. This is Warhawk and a student of Hillary Clinton, and she's married to Richard Kagan, and all of these are Warhawks. And as a matter of fact, let me tell you also, all of them have family roots to that area over there. And they always had a hatred for Russia, always, all right? So it is no coincidence that she was in charge of this. And remember, these people escape each administration, and they go on. It's a continuation of them because they're in not the highest office, but they're in the mid to lower office where they really push policy. Okay? Okay, let me get this off the screen for a minute because I want to show you something real quick because I want to go back to that. Let me, hold on, everybody. Let me get this, all right, this off the screen real quick. All right, so now, Ms. Nuland said F the EU when she was talking about the overthrow of the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych. She was talking about how the United States has invested $5 billion in the overthrow of the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych and who America was going to put in office to succeed him and then eventually turn Ukraine over to the West so that they can put it in NATO so that they can do what Mr. Zbigniew Brzezinski had stated that they should do in his book, I think it's called The Grand Chessboard, when he said that they had to separate Ukraine. And now remember that this preceded this incident by decades. Well, they had to remove Ukraine from Russia's sphere of influence because without Ukraine, Russia would cease to be a great global power, right? This was remember, he was the national security advisor under President Jimmy Carter. He was the mentor to former President Barack Hussein Obama, right? And if we were talking about such different perspectives from Obama, Biden, and Trump, then why all of them follow the policy directive of that? Can you answer me that? Can any of you answer me that? Because if you can answer me that, this is what I'll say to y'all.
What you talking about, Willis?
I was born at night, just not last night, player. All right? Understand that. So listen. She, in the audio that was released, was talking about who was going to be in the government. Guess what happened? Those very people became government officials, right? And those very people who became government officials were also connected to not only Barack Obama, they became connected to who? Who came after him? Huh? Talk to me and tell me who came after him. Donald J. Trump. Then who came after him? Joseph Biden. And now who's after Biden? Donald J. Trump. And you telling me a big change is underway? Man, if you guys don't stop this foolishness, stop it. So let's listen to what she has to say, okay?
When you're a high-ranking official talking about diplomatic efforts in Ukraine, the last thing you want to do is drop your guard.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, the EU.
But that is exactly what reportedly happened between US Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and US Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyatt. The exchange has since surfaced online, including the crude swipe at the European Union. The audio clip of a woman and man, said to be Nuland and Pyatt, hears them discussing strategies to work with the three main opposition figures.
I don't think Kleitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of him not going into the government, just let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Kleitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week, you know. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
There is a suggestion for Nuland to contact Klitschko directly to play to his top dog sensibilities, while Nuland refers to getting the United Nations involved in a political solution. And that's where the unfortunate comment arises.
I'm obviously not going to comment on private diplomatic conversations, other than to say it was pretty impressive tradecraft. The audio was extremely clear. Hello, how are you? Good to see you. We're here from America. Would you like some bread? Please take something.
Thank you for coming here.
This was Nuland and Payat visiting Independence Square in Kiev in December, handing out food to protesters and police. This latest episode is embarrassing for the US and allows Russia to argue that the opposition is being manipulated by Washington, something that Barack Obama has always denied. The clip was said to have been posted online by the Russian deputy PM, but that has not yet been confirmed.
Because the clip may have been posted by the Russian diplomat, does that make it illegitimate? Because we know whose voices those were. And all one had to do was follow the what happened thereafter. You had Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko, the former world champions in boxing, become head figures in Ukraine. And as always, just like it was in boxing, when Vladimir Clinton got his clock clean, his big brother Vitaly came in and helped him out. The same way. And that's what we're looking at right now. Okay? Ping One says Nuland is barred from many buffets in Ukraine. Ping One, you tripping. Anyway, so yeah, all of these people that were mentioned here became leaders in Ukraine. If that's a coincidence, huh? And remember that Obama was pushing this, but it was not rebuffed, repudiated, or renounced under Trump's first administration. And the funding was doubled, and the weapons were doubled, and the training were doubled. Then we moved to sleepy Joe Biden, who is crazy as hell, and he just took it up a notch. And now we're back to Miss Gideon. And what did Trump say earlier today? Now, if they give us their resources, if they sign the deal with us, we'll continue to give them weapons and intelligence, so they can fight on. Because without the U.S. weapons and funding, the Ukrainian army would have ceased to exist a while ago. So hold on. You put this man, Zelensky, in a position like this, and you're mad because he's crying that you're not living up to your word. Well, we keep pouring in money. You should. What do you think over 1 million people's lives are worth in Ukraine? That's not to say the 100 or 200,000 Russians that were killed, and all of the bystanders, huh? All of the destruction of land and infrastructure, because you had this notion to separate these Slavic nations from each other so that you can balkanize Russia because of its resources and mostly because of its nuclear potential, because Russia could wipe you out. Remember, Russia is the largest nation in the world. It is roughly, now with the territory it is gained, it is roughly 3 times the size of the United States. So they see that as a problem. The resources, the huge size of it, massive size of Russia, all right? The not yielding to the LGBT, whatever, I don't know, the Rainbow Coalition or whatever you call it, and all of these liberal things that they're trying to force feed people and push down your throat. And then we look at Ukraine. Because you had the idea to bring them over to you, force them now, because you violated the treaty that you signed for Ukraine's security. Remember, Russia wasn't supposed to interfere in Ukraine. The U.S. wasn't supposed to interfere with Ukraine, and Europe wasn't supposed to interfere in Ukraine's sovereign affairs. They were supposed to remain neutral, but that was never enough for you. Just like it wasn't enough for you when you brought in all of those former Soviet territories. It was never enough. And now you're blaming the victim, even though he was a stupid person, but you're blaming him for your failure. That's what they do. They are not adults. They never accept responsibility for anything. That's the mind and that's the thought of a child. It was his fault. It was her fault. Even while you're dripping in blood, it's that person's fault. And then the media washes it away and they turn the tide whenever it suits them. Yes, some of this is Zelensky's fault, because there's no way that I would have sacrificed my nation. There's no way I would have sacrificed my people for some dollars that is quickly losing its value. For some promises by a nation that never, ever keeps its promises. What did Putin say? America and the West were agreement incapable. So yes, you have some blame, but the majority of the blame goes to the empire of the US and the UK. Because this didn't just happen in 2014. This didn't happen in 1991. This was a long-term plan set out by multiple administrations to eventually break up the Soviet Union, then weaken and break up its successor, which is Russia, so that they can continue to have a hegemonic grip on the entire world without rival. It's in their stated policy to prevent any nation or combination of nations to rise up to near peer or peer power with the United States. That's in their stated national policy. Nobody's saying that, though. Nobody's bringing that up because it's an inconvenient truth. See, this is the news rundown. We're going to tell it like they say on the street, like it is. We're going to tell it like it is. Okay? So I want to play this clip too. All right? I got some stuff. I got some stuff for you. I got some clips from me. I'm gonna play a clip of Brian Beletic that I got from our talk. Oh, matter of fact, join us this weekend. I wasn't able to join Brian on the roundtable discussion on the New Atlas because I had some family stuff I had to take care of. But hopefully I'll be there this weekend on Brian's channel, the New Atlas. Okay. So shout out to my guy Brian. All right. But I want you to listen to this. All right. Pay close attention to this because we got to connect a lot of dots. So again, now I'm gonna be a little bit here, a little bit there, because I want to address a couple things. Where are we with the Israeli-Palestinian crisis? And the reason I say that is because since we're talking on finance, you know that the Israeli economy is in a tailspin, and the only thing that's keeping it afloat is injections of aid from the United States and the European Union. And the only way the Israeli regime can continue its war of aggression is 500 plus shipments of weapons from the United States alone. So where are we with that? Because this is unsustainable for Europe. This is unsustainable for Israel. This is unsustainable for the so-called world's only superpower, because all three are essentially bankrupt.
Yeah, I think the one thing that collapsed with the events in Israel over the past 10, 11 months is the illusion that Israel was ever about having a homeland for the Jewish people. It was always an imperial project. And, it goes back to Halford Mackinder, where he wanted to rule Eurasian landmass, when he wanted to surround the pivot area and the pivot power, which he at the time identified most likely as Russia. So the British imperial establishment were afraid of a land-based power of emerging in the pivot area of the Eurasian landmass, and they expected that Russia would be that power. And their strategy to prevent Russia from emerging as a rival power to the British Empire is to surround it with a number of beachheads. Back in the day, in 1904, when Halford Mackinder wrote this geographical pivot of history, he was talking about Italy, about France, about India, about Korea as those beachheads. But And in the decades since, they cultivated Ukraine, they created Israel, and then they divided India into Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and so they did this with the view of using all those countries. And Halford Mackinder explicitly wrote this in his treatises. The idea was that the Western navies would supply war material to the land-based army of these powers, these continental powers, and then have those powers wage wars against the pivot power, i.e. Russia, in order to keep it weak, keep it constantly fighting quagmire wars, and so that the British Empire could maintain their hegemony over the Eurasian landmass. Same thing is going on today, except the geographies, not the geography, but the geopolitics have changed a little bit, and Israel is one of those things. So it was never meant as a homeland for the Jewish people. That was merely the acceptable, let's say, an acceptable rationale for expelling Palestinian peoples from their homeland and wiping it off the map. But now this project is sinking, same as Ukraine is. And so, of course, they will not give up, because giving up on Israel equals giving up on the wealth, on the resource wealth of the Middle Eastern region, of the whole region. They will lose control over it, and what that means is that they will lose the ability to control the collateral, which then translates into financialist flows in the Western financial system. So they will try to defend it to the end, but of course, again, when this gentleman, I don't remember his name, that you showed the video clip where he says, like, oh, we have to continue exploiting these resources.
Senator Todd Young.
Oh, okay, Todd Young. So Todd Young also mentioned the thing called private-public partnership. What that means is that the private stakeholders take the profits from these arrangements. They take all the benefits. But if things go sour, then the public pays the cost. The public pays the cost in terms of military enforcement of this system of governance, of this colonial system. And they pick up the tab if things go south. And what that means is that, all this aid that's flowing to Israel and to Ukraine is going to be borne by the ordinary people of Western nations, of the United States, of Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, all of the nations that are in this, let's call it Euro-Atlanticist alliance. And then if they happen to win, then the benefits will accrue to the imperial vested interests, which is a very, very, very small segment of our populations. And they are usually, they are invariably the moneylender interests. It's the international banking cartel. And the defense of Israel, because they have no downside to it. If we pay the bill and they take the profits, they don't really have downside. So they will defend it to the end. What they're worried about is that we all rebel, and that the French people whip out the guillotines back, and the Germans rebel, that the British rebel. So they have to repress the populations at home, which is why now you're seeing very draconian new restrictions on the freedom of speech, of freedom of gathering, freedom to protest. They're trying to pen us into 15-minute cities. They want us all to have a digital ID connected to our smart devices so that they could track where we are at every moment, so that they could see immediately if we're planning to do something naughty, if we're getting all uppity, and that they could squash any freedom movement. But history is, let's say that the track record in history of such endeavors it has a very poor outcomes, very poor prognosis. Every empire in history has collapsed, and so will this one. And then it's just a question of what end these people are going to meet. But I have the impression that they will come to no good end, because we know too much now. And, you know, once you've seen all this, there's no unseeing it.
Mm-hmm. So before I go further, let me give a shout out to Luca Tony, my guy Vera, my girl Vera, I'm sorry, M Sparks, Shelly is in the building, Holly is in the building, Phobos Moon, Cosmo Ray, and Cosmo, you got it right, the Khazarian Mafia. I see what you put up there, yeah. So check it. So you hear what he said, the empire is collapsing. And when, just like with all empires, when things are collapsing, everybody's to blame but the people who are running the empire straight into the ground, right? And when you hear the media start repeating and regurgitating what the government is saying, that is because they are the scribes of today. You remember in biblical and Quranic time, they called the media the scribes, right? Because they dictated and put out to the people what the government wanted. And now when you see the alternative media saying pretty much the same thing, then you have to question, what the hell is going on? I know you know better. We know this man. We know that Zelensky has a little power because he's Ukrainian and he's in Ukraine and he's in the office of the presidency. But does he have so much power as to ignore and then disregard the will of NATO, especially the United States and the UK? Man, stop this. Stop this. Michael is in the building. Michael Lynn is in the building. So what I'm telling you is to think through the fog. Think through all of this haze and all of this confusion. Use common sense and go with your gut. Don't let anybody that you like, including me, deceive you or mislead you. Your life is at stake because we're watching an entire world, a global system, dying. It is being killed right now by the policies of the Western world. They, with every move that they make, thinking that they're making it better, they're only exacerbating the problems, right? Let's go a little further. So this is what Kiji Noy had to say about America as she collapses. And this is what I'm telling you. When you look at what they're saying about Zelensky, yeah, Zelensky, he's irrational. But is it so much of him, or is it too much of him to ask the U.S. and the U.K. to give him what they promised after sacrificing 1 million people and a third of his territory? Is it too much to ask him? And I'm not advocating war. I think Russia is in the right in what they're doing. So I'm going to be honest about this. I think that fighting against the Western world's policies of total hegemonic domination is the right thing to do. But is Zelensky so wrong for asking the United States, well, everything we've given him is disappeared? But that's your fault too. Why? In other war zones, you have accounting so that you can understand and know where this is going and how this is being spent. Why didn't you have it here? It's because it's a big money laundering scheme. And so when it all hits the fan, you can blame the puppet. As Shelley said, what did she say? An exploitable patsy. So the exploitable patsy gets the major blame, but Trump and the West now are suing for peace. The very people who put us on the path for thermonuclear war are suing for peace. Well, Trump is trying to get peace with Russia. Is he really? That is not what he's after. He's after a cessation of violence for a while so that he can then double down and then pivot to Asia to prevent China's breakout capacity. And then if he can defeat China, and that's a very big deal because it's not happening, he wants to double back and then take care of Russia. So is that really suing for peace? What that is prioritizing imperial goals. Call it for what it is. I'm tired of everybody trying to put lipstick on a pig and trying to tell me that that's Halle Berry. That's not how things go. So listen what Kiji Noy says about the imperial fall of America and what to look out for. Yeah, I got a lot of interviews with a lot of big names. As a matter of fact, I want to say this to you all. A lot of people who are now popular and making the rounds on the bigger channels, they were here before they were on the bigger channels like Alex Craner and a lot of the rest of them, okay? YouTube, they suppress my numbers. They've taken hundreds of subscribers from me, and they do it in small doses. Whenever it goes up, it goes back down. Whenever it goes up, it goes back down. And then on my phone, I took pictures. I was trying to find the Red Pill Diaries. And every time I tried to find the Red Pill Diaries, it said no videos. So I couldn't find my own channel. I had to sign in as, the Red Pill Diaries to find my own channel. So I know I've been blocked and banned. So I already understand that, okay? So, but as long as I got your attention, I'm going to tell it to you so that you can go tell it to other people and maybe you can make a difference. Okay? But listen to what Kiji Noy has to say. Do you see America losing her footing, her grip on the Middle East because of this hypocrisy, this blatant hypocrisy and imperial hubris that is being shown to the Muslim world, to the Middle Eastern and North African region over this Palestinian conflict?
I think it is. I think it is losing its footing. I mean, you already see that in that it is starting to lose Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was the United States, one of the United States' most important proxies, along with Israel. It was what the United States used to prevent national liberation movements in the Middle East, Baathism and other national social movements. This was the kind of bulwark against that. And it was also the basis of the US petrodollar, which allows the United States to have this unlimited credit card that it spends because the US dollar is based on it being the reserve currency, which is tied to its being the peg for the petrodollar. And the fact that Saudi Arabia is slipping out of its orbit, and where Saudi Arabia goes, the other Gulf states go. And you see the Gulf states are building relations with China and the Belt and Road and the BRICS. Then you see that there is a kind of foundational centrifugal force that's happening. And the US is no longer able to exert its will in this arbitrary and unitary way as it was able to. But the problem with this is that this is a very, very dangerous moment, because as the empire weakens, as it senses its power waning and slipping away from its grasp, it becomes more dangerous. To give you an analogy, it's like the drunk at the bar, and the bar is closing. The final call has been given, the bar is closing, and the drunk is drunk with power. It's drunk with power, but it has maxed out its credit cards, okay? And it struck out with everybody. And it's time to go home. It's time for the empire to go home. But doesn't want to go home. The drunk doesn't want to go home. And what it wants is it wants a fight. It wants to have a fight. It's going to have a fight. It's not going to go home. It just wants to pick a fight. And if it has to take on the entire bar, it will. And that's kind of the mindset of the neocon dead-enders who believed that it was their mandate starting the 90s to rule the planet. They refer to it as unipolar global hegemony. That's just a fancy word for boss of the world. They believed that they were the boss of the world. And they believed that they should and could do anything in order to do that. And nobody could have a say. In fact, one of the neocons said, it's our job to pick up a small country and throw it against the wall every few years just to show who's boss. This is what they said. They said, we create our own reality. The rest of you can study it. We make our own reality. That was the kind of hubris and arrogance that fueled this imperial project, this neocon imperial project. And now this power is waning and they're becoming frantic. And so they want to take on the world. One war in the Ukraine is not enough. A second war, a genocide in the Middle East is not enough. They want a third war, right? 2 wars and a genocide are not enough. Now they want to also go to war with China. And I assure you, there is no way that that can have any chance of being successful. But this is their hubris. This is how they think. And they would rather see the end of the planet than the end of their power, because the end of their power is the end of the world for them. They'd rather see the end of the world than the end of their imperial privilege and power. And that's why this moment is so dangerous.
All right, now check it. While that was playing, just a few seconds ago, I just put in Zbigniew Brzezinski, Russia, Ukraine. And this is a quote from Zbigniew Brzezinski, okay? It cannot be stressed enough that without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire. But with Ukraine suborned and then subordinated, Russia automatically becomes an empire. So his main goal, he was stressing this up till the day that he died, that we've got to separate Ukraine from Russia in order to beat Russia, subjugate Russia, and then expand the tentacles of empire. Now we hear Trump in the foreign policy team, and we hear the alternative media talking about Trump intends to get back all the money that they spent on Ukraine. Then they ridiculed Zelensky for saying that, hey, those were investments. We shouldn't have to pay back any debt. Okay, well, we have it where the successive U.S. administrations push into play a scheme to undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine to make a weak government that is subjugated to the West, and they invested money in it so that they could use Ukraine as a battering ram to keep Russia focused on its near abroad, so it can eventually weaken Russia, bankrupt Russia, and then they can then do the rest by going in and neutering Russia's nuclear potential. And now they're screaming about the money that they've invested after having 1 million people killed in Ukraine and a couple 100,000 killed of Russian soldiers, or 100,000 killed of Russian soldiers. Screaming about the money that they put in there. See, nobody analyzes this way. Listen, as a matter of fact, here's an article right here. U.S. to get back money spent on aid to Ukraine, to Kyiv, Trump. Now, here's something else that nobody says. Most of the aid that was designated for Ukraine was not given to Ukraine. It was designated to Ukraine, then it was taken from the budget and then handed over to weapons manufacturers of the U.S. That's what happened. So even if you say the Ukraine owed $500 billion, does it really? Because the money was never really transferred over. It was taken. This is what the IMF does. This is what the World Bank does. They agree to a loan. They take the loan. Say, for instance, let's just give an example. Say, for instance, what is it? Niger. Niger qualifies for a $5 billion loan. Say, for instance, at the time, Niger has a corrupt government or a government that is weak. The United States or the World Bank would then, or the IMF would then allocate money for Western corporations to come in and do what they're doing. This would be put on the books as a debt to Niger, and only 500 million would go to Niger, because they know that the government would then only put about 50 million or 100 million into the people, and then they would put money in their own pocket and put them in Western banks. So Niger would be on the hook for $5 billion, even though Niger really only saw 50 million of it or 100 million of it. This is what he's screaming about. Why isn't anybody talking about that? And if you instigated the war and the war didn't turn out in your terms, doesn't the victim get to cry about reparations and not the aggressor? But in bizarro world, because that's Donald Trump talking, everybody they're mesmerized. If this was Joe Biden talking, they'd be ridiculing him like I did. I ask anybody here to show me where I'm wrong at. To show me where I'm wrong at. And to disprove one thing that I've said. Because everything that I'm telling you is facts-based. Matter of fact, let's go a little further in this article. I read the article title. Now let's look at it. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky will travel to Washington on Friday to sign an agreement on mineral resources, the American president has said. The U.S. is going to get back the money it has spent on military and financial assistance to Kyiv through the upcoming mineral deal with Ukraine, President Donald Trump said on Wednesday ahead of his first cabinet meeting. Now stop right there. Why isn't anybody questioning him on that? We have historical proof that this was a U.S. and Western-led coup in Ukraine. We have historical proof that the United States co-opted Ukraine's political system and financial system. We have historical truth that they put in their guys, right? We have historical truth that they put the policy in place and they kept supplying the weapons and they kept funding the training and they kept putting in banderites into the military. And now that the war didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, you have the criminal saying, I'm going back to that house, and the victim is going to have to give me my wallet that I lost in there when I was fleecing the place for the money that was in the house. Why isn't anybody saying that? Right is right and wrong is wrong. Zelensky is a fool. Zelensky is a criminal. Zelensky is a puppet. But right is right and wrong is wrong. I told you I call it like it is. And a lot of people cannot stand it. Please go back to the receipts you found on Trump still funding Zelensky, Rashid. Well, you know what? Trump said that, matter of fact, let's read a little bit of this article. Let's see if it's in this article a little bit, okay? Let's go here. Because I know he was saying it on the video earlier in the news that that if they give them the resources, the U.S. will continue to fund the Ukrainian forces and will continue to arm them. So this is a shakedown. What Trump is doing is strong arming the victim. Man, I'm telling you, this is crazy. And nobody is calling this out. Because they are so enamored with Trump's America's First policy or rhetoric that they're not peering through the layers of the onion. They would have done it if it was Biden or Obama. So listen, it says, Trump had initially demanded the equivalent of up to $500 billion worth of natural resources as compensation for the aid provided to Kiev. Washington then proposed a deal that would grant the U.S. sweeping rights to Ukraine's reserves of natural resources as a form of compensation. Speaking to journalists on Wednesday, Trump said that the Ukrainian leader is going to be coming on Friday, and that is now confirmed. The two sides are expected to sign what the U.S. president described as a very big agreement that will cover Ukraine's reserves of rare earth metals, among other things. Trump doubled down on his claim that the U.S. has spent $350 billion on various forms of assistance to Ukraine, to Kyiv, adding that we've been able to make a deal where we're going to get our money back, and we're going to get a lot of money in the future. That's strong on it. American taxpayers should not be footing the bill for assisting Ukraine, he said. So stop right there. Then why were you doing it in your first term? And when did this epiphany occur that American taxpayers shouldn't be footing the bill of an illegal war of aggression which violated all international norms and international law. When did this epiphany happen? Huh? Are you going to ask those questions? Or are you just going to take it hook, line, and sinker with the people that you like on other channels? Will you please ask these questions? Why did his administration continue to fund double the funding, double the training, double the armaments? As a matter of fact, I was watching Trump earlier today. He said that he took credit for the anti-tank missiles. He took credit for funding the death of Russian soldiers. He said it was me, not Biden, not Obama. It was me. Go Google it. If you think I'm lying, go Google it. And you say he's a peace president. Man, I'm telling you, these people can tell you anything they can pee on you and tell you it's raining. Because you may like the exterior. But inside them is a sepulcher. Man, anyway, let's go further. So listen. Michael N said he did say that. I remember that. I'm not making this up. He said that today. So, and it says the U.S. president did not reveal the parameters of the future agreement. Early on Wednesday, Zelensky confirmed to journalists that Ukraine and the U.S. had agreed on a framework deal on the nation's minerals. He insisted that the documents does not include any mention of Ukrainian debt to the U.S., either amounting to $350 or $100 billion. According to Zelensky, the agreement also says nothing about Kiev being obliged to compensate U.S. expenditures on aiding Ukraine in a ratio of 2-to-1. The Ukrainian government reviewed and greenlighted the agreement on Wednesday, according to Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, who called it an important step towards implementing a victory plan. Oh, by the way, while I'm talking, and we're talking about this situation, why didn't anybody say something when at one time the Prime Minister of Ukraine was American? Huh? At one time. Go Google this. One of the high officials in Ukraine was an American. Man, stop this. Stop playing with my intelligence. Anyway, the Ukrainian media outlets Strana, UA, and I can't even pronounce that other Pravda published what they claim as the text of the agreement. According to the publications, Ukraine and the U.S. will create a joint fund to which 50% of all revenues from the future development of Ukraine's natural resources will accrue. Already the existing enterprises are exempt from the agreement. The accumulated assets can be used for investment in the Ukrainian economy at least once a year, according to the report. In exchange, man, this thing is jumping. The U.S. will reportedly assume long-term financial obligations to develop a stable and prosperous Ukraine. So, on the one hand, we're screaming about the taxpayers should not fund it, and on the other hand, you go into an agreement that the taxpayers will fund it. Double talk. That's that Orwellian double speak I'm telling you about. Man, these people, and you guys believe that. See, you've been fleeced so much. You've been lied to so much. You've been let down so much to when a person speaks to your ills and a person speaks to your desires, you want to believe them so much that sometimes you ignore what's right in your face. Because that's the only person that's speaking to your desires and to your hurt. And every blue moon, they might address an issue that's to your hurt, right? And you say, yeah, I told you something was going on. But when you unmask all of the policy initiatives, you'll see that the vast majorities are to your detriment. How can pivoting to Asia to fight a war with China be to your stability and your progression? When China is the largest economy, the largest manufacturer, the largest investor, the largest trade partner to practically in the entire world. You're in debt to China. Your stores get their products from China or a Chinese subsidiary. How can waging an economic war with tariffs which means that the very people that you said that you didn't want to foot the bill in Ukraine, which was the American taxpayers, would then be forced to foot the bill when you put tariffs on Chinese goods that are being imported into the United States. That means that the people who are paying taxes and paying for the goods have to pay a higher fee on products that were just cheaper last week. Huh? How does that make sense? And how is that to your benefit? I want to know. I just want to know. Hey, everybody, smash that like button. We've been on the air for an hour and 15 minutes. Smash the like button. It's free. Okay? So, let's go a little further. So, I haven't lost. Let me go back up here in the chat for a minute. I have not lost. I think it was Shelly. Or it could have been Holly. Excuse me. They said the stuff about Trump. Let's see. Please go back to the receipts you found on Trump. Still funding, as I was saying. And remember that without U.S. funding, listen to me good. 90+% of the social programs, the public workers, meaning school teachers and pensioners and all that stuff, government officials, would cease to be. It would dry up. So if that has not happened, then we know that under Trump that they did not stop the funding to Ukraine, because some of the soldiers are still getting paid, the president is still getting paid, the parliament is still getting paid, and the majority of the payment is coming from the U.S. government. So right there, you know that they're still funding Ukraine. They're still funding Zelensky. They need him in front of the camera as we speak to present him as the liability, the one who is standing in front of peace. At the same time, the one who, if they don't sign this thing, will cut off funding. So what Trump and them has molded together is this here. Every which way Zelensky goes, he's in trouble. If he signs the agreement, then Ukraine really ceases to be a nation, because the United States will have sovereignty over their resources. And how can you have an independent policy? How can you be an independent nation? And how can you grow economically when you are when another nation has a stranglehold over your resources, which you need to build up your industries, your economy, your commerce, huh? And if you don't sign it, then we'll present you as the obstacle to peace. You're a tyrant, a dictator, and then we'll say that elections need to be called. And you know you can't win the elections. So if you try to stay in power, a coup will take place. And America will do like this. She set this man up for a fall in every way possible. Right? But he stepped into the mousetrap, nibbling on the little cheese of a couple $1 billion that he can put in his own bank account, a couple $1 billion that his partners can put in their own. This is the payback. This is the blowback of that. Whenever you get in the bed with the dogs and the dogs don't have flea collars, expect to get fleas. That's what I'm saying. So he got in the bed with political dogs. They bit him. They continue to bite him. And now he has fleas. And he has to deal with that. Man, it's too many examples of why not to get in the bed with the U.S. political elite. Okay? So, now, and man, what is going on here? I'll tell you what. So let's go to something real quick. Okay? I want to play something for you guys because we're talking about tariffs. Okay? So, give me just a few minutes of your time to play the tariffs. I'm going to play a few more videos because I want to connect a lot of these dots. And a lot of the videos are from previous interviews that I did, but we have some from other areas also. And I just want to show you. I want to refresh your memory because it seems like everybody has amnesia. Everybody. And it shouldn't be that way. Too many lives are at stake. for us to say it's Zelensky's fault when we know that Zelensky is on the string doing this. It's not the puppeteer's fault. Or it's not the person who carved the puppet and put him on strings and then put him on the stage to dance and is dangling the string to make it move. It's the puppet that's messed up in mid-rehearsal or right when the people came into the auditorium. It's the puppet's fault. It's not Pinocchio's fault. I mean, it's not Geppetto's fault. It's Pinocchio's fault. Man, stop this. Stop this. Let's go for it. I want you to just listen to this real quick. I'm going to play a couple clips, and then we're going to tie it in to why Trump is talking about tariffs, okay? All right.
President-elect Trump is vowing to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS nations unless they commit to not developing a new currency. Trump made the declaration in a Truth Social post Saturday saying, quote, "There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the U.S. dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America." BRICS is a group comprised of 9 countries with emerging economies. They initially included Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa. But earlier this year, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates formally joined the group. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now for more. Kelly, what effects would 100% tariffs on these nations have on consumers?
So look, if they were actually implemented, prices would likely go up because companies importing goods from China, from Brazil, from those countries, they would have to pay a 100% tax on that. And then what would they do? They would likely pass that on to us. Maybe not the full amount, but likely a lot of that. And so the other thing to think about is we are already hearing, oh, we were thinking about a 10% tariff on China previously. There are already tariffs on China that exist right now. A lot of companies are thinking, well, where can I move my manufacturing? India is a good option. Indonesia, which has applied for membership to the BRICS bloc, is a good option. So now companies would also be thinking, okay, well, I can't do it in China. I can't do it over there. They might move manufacturing here, which would help with jobs, but also increase labor costs. But I said that's if it's implemented, right?
Okay.
This could also be a negotiating tactic.
Why is Trump pushing for this commitment for them to not develop their own currency?
So the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency. The vast majority of transactions when one company from one country and one company from another transact, they happen in the U.S. dollar. Okay. Money is power. And so if you were to have these other countries put together an alternative currency, some of that power could go away. That could be bad because it would make it harder for us to pay off our debts, and it would also impact our influence on the world stage. I will give you one really impactful example. When Western nations impose economic sanctions on, let's say, Russia at the beginning of the Ukraine war, that really choked them financially. If Russia was able to transact with other countries in a different currency, the bite of those sanctions go away.
So you sort of explained some of the motivations why the BRICS nations and the BRICS bloc would want to have their own currency. Are there any other reasons that you mentioned other than obviously money is power and it would remove the sting of sanctions?
So this gives them an opportunity to be less reliant on the United States. And of course, China, India, some of these developing economic superpowers want to have that more power than they do right now. So, but the sanctions one is a very big one because the R in BRICS is Russia, and they hold a lot of influence on that bloc.
Kelly O'Grady, always appreciate you. Thank you.
So we're going to play a couple more clips real quick, but I want to say this. They tried to move Apple to India. Didn't work out for them. They moved it right back to China. They tried to do Ford in a couple of those motor plants in India. It didn't work out for them. India does not have the infrastructure. It doesn't have the trained people in those fields. They had to go back to China. And even if they were to move there, they would still be a part of BRICS, right? BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Huh? So we're going to get to that in a minute because I'm going to play a clip from Geopolitical Economy Report shortly. Okay, and I think the guy there does an excellent job on this stuff. So if you can, go subscribe to him also over there. But I want to play this other thing about Trump real quick, and then we're going to get to some major clips, okay?
Ultimately, it kills your dollar and it kills everything the dollar represents, and we have to continue to have that be the world currency. I think it's important. I think it would be losing a war if we lost If we lost the dollar as the world currency, I think that would be the equivalent of losing a war.
I would like to ask about.
That's why they are now trying to transition to China. Boom. Because they're losing the economic war. And they are stretched thin. And remember that they tried to drain Russia militarily and economically, and it wind up draining Europe, NATO, and the United States, both economically and politically and militarily. So they are now looking at it and saying, we have to do something to stop the hemorrhaging, and we can go back and focus on the greatest present threat and danger to U.S. hegemony and dollar rule, and that's China. So they are really trying to position themselves to try to work out some type of agreement with Russia, which they will never keep. They will never keep. They will only use it to pacify the situation so that they can then free up some resources, free up some money, free up some weapons, free up troops, so that they can then position what they call the Asian pivot to Asia, so that they can then try to provoke China. And I advise all you to go to and this is not no shameless plug. Go to Patreon, my Patreon. Subscribe. If just subscribe just for a day or two, just get on it and look at the article. And I go into why CQ Brown was fired. Okay, it's deep in there, and it's pertaining to China, and it's pertaining to the collapse of American hegemony. It's in there. You got to go check it out. Okay. But listen, let's go to the next clip real quick. All right. Well, before we go there, where's that at? What I just had. What Trump says that the dollar is dead. Where is it? Where was that? I mean, not the dollar, but the let me see. I must have taken it down. Trump said that that he killed BRICS, right? He killed BRICS, and any BRICS nation that tries to use their own currency. And think about that. Any nation using their own currency is a threat to America. And most people sit there and they don't even think nothing wrong with that thought. If any nation uses their own currency to transact trade and commerce, is a threat to the U.S. You don't think something's wrong with that? Why do nations have national currencies? For the benefit of their own nations. And why should your currency be imposed on everybody else's? Huh? See, that's what I'm saying, that ingrained exceptionalism, racism, and fascism in all of the administrations. See, Trump wasn't saying that we should take the dollar and be fine with our dollar being our way of trade. He is talking about maintaining dollar hegemony. He's just doing it in a different way than Biden was doing it, a different way than Obama was doing it, a different way than Clinton was doing it, or Bush Jr. or Bush Sr. or Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter or any of them. All of them wanted to maintain the dollar. Why? Because it gives the United States exorbitant advantage and exorbitant power and influence. And without the dollar, the economic and political playing field would be even. And you don't have to worry about America cutting military spending. She would be forced to, because the world would not be in a position to accept her currency to give America a blank check to spend $1 trillion on war material. This is unacceptable to any administration. So what you're seeing is a lighter side of imperialism with Donald Trump. It's not that he parted ways with Joe Biden. He just looks at it in a different way. Joe wanted to be all in your face and fight Russia and then fight China at the same time. And Trump said, oh, man, look at it. We've assessed it. We don't have this. We got to build up a little political capital because we've alienated everybody. Let's give them something to think that things are changing. Let's go after USAID. So what they did, they didn't destroy USAID, as the media proclaimed. They brought it in under the State Department. They rebranded it, and now they're focusing on the finances, to focus the finances on color revolutions, regime changes, covert operations. So why everybody is so, oh, they didn't know what they're doing is refining it. Remember what I told you, when America needs, when she's losing, when she's hemorrhaging, when she's bleeding, she needs rest, rearmaments, and she needs to recalibrate. Those are the 3 R's of American imperialism. So that's what is going on. She gives something out to make it seem like we're turning a page in this. We will no longer do this. How in the hell can you talk about destroying USAID and you got 100 other different programs just like USAID going, and then all you did was bring USAID under the State Department, rebrand it, refocus and recalibrate the funding so that it can be particular in its movements that suits you, and then you openly state that America must lead, America must dominate, and America must keep the dollar, and any nation trying to use their own currency is a threat to the United States, and we'll sanction them and we'll go to war with them. That's not imperialism. Isn't that what Joe Biden was saying? But in a different way. What about Obama? What about Bush? What about Clinton? What about Bush Sr.? What about Reagan? What about Carter? We can go all the way back. Different administrations, different takes on matters, but same continuation of policy. Everybody, I know I'm making people mad because they had hopes in a change. But that's what happened when Obama talked about change, right? A lot of people got peed off with me when I was telling them about that too. I'm gonna tell you the truth, and it's up to you to deal with it. So let's go further. Now they said they were going to put in, he was going to institute 100% tariffs on any nations using the dollar. Then you had some economists saying that American consumers, now this was 2 years ago. So what does it mean today? American consumers bear 93% of the cost of any U.S. tariffs on China. So if I was buying this product for $10 and you put it up there and now it's, let's just say it goes up to $40 or something, I'm spending $30 more on this. So that means my pockets are lighter. That means I have little money to spend on in other areas, which is a detriment to your own economy. Do you not see businesses after businesses closing down? That is a direct result of your irrational policies of tariffs. Okay, I digress. I just want you to listen to this real quick, okay? Let's go to something real quick. Because they said the BRICS. So first I want to go back to something that I played on the show before. This is 1 minute and 55 seconds, okay? And the reason I want to play this again, I want to show you because Trump was talking about how the dollar must remain supreme and how it would be like losing the war. So I want to go back to geopolitical economy report and play that about the dollar, and then I'm going to bring it up to speed with a newer clip, okay? So you guys bear with me because I want to inform you. I want you to have everything at your disposal to make an informed, educated decision which will best fit you and your family, okay? All right, let's go to this real quick.
Look, it goes beyond these things. That just today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Now, this drive toward de-dollarization that we see led by countries like China and Brazil is angering the United States. And a clear example of this was the neoconservative Republican Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. When he heard about the news of China and Brazil de-dollarizing their trade and using their local currencies, Marco Rubio was furious. And on Fox News, he complained that if countries drop the dollar, the U.S. will no longer be able to sanction them. That's a very revealing quote because it's really a U.S. official admitting that by maintaining the dominance of the US dollar around the world, the United States is able to weaponize its currency and turn it into a geopolitical tool to attack any country that carries out policies that Washington doesn't like. So the US has imposed sanctions on countries that represent 1/4 of the global population, including China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Zimbabwe, Syria. There are so many people living under brutal sanctions that prevent them from doing trade, prevent them from exporting, that cause massive economic problems and inflation at home, and a lack of certain goods, a lack of medicines and technology. So this explains why countries around the world are looking for alternatives to the US dollar.
So now, I want to bring something to your attention real quick. Hold on one second. Let me pull something up. Hold on one second, everybody. All right. So now, you heard Marco Rubio as a congressman, right? All right. Who is he now? The Secretary of State. He's the China hawk. What is the Secretary of Defense? A China hawk. What is the FBI guy? A China hawk. What is the Undersecretary of State? A China hawk. What is Donald Trump? China hawk, right? and you thought that something was different. Man, stop this. Stop playing with me. Okay? So listen. So we go into that. All right? And I want you to listen to this because it goes right along. This I cut this up. This is about 6 or 7 minutes, something like that. But I want you to pay close attention to this. Also comes from Geopolitical Economy Report, right? And he talks about BRICS because remember Donald Trump says that BRICS is dead if they even mention the dollar not being the world reserve currency. He would do this and he would do that. And so people are scared in BRICS of him and scared of the United States. This is what he said today, okay? And yesterday. So listen to what Geopolitical Economy Report has to say about BRICS. And this is what is scaring Trump with the that's why he's waving the tariffs. That's why he needs to recalibrate, rest, and rearm economically, politically, and militarily for his battle with China. Why not Russia? With Russia's vast nuclear arsenal. Because China has the largest industry. You know, I did a show and I showed you where the Chinese shipbuilding is 200 and sometimes bigger than the United States. Well, in reality, the updated release from the intelligence agency say that China's ship can, for every one ship, the Chinese can build 634, something like that, 634 ships for every one ship that the United States can build. The senators and the congressman said that one shipyard in China is bigger than all of the shipyards in the United States. And China has at least 15 shipyards that size, right? So now they're looking at the largest, and they were saying that China used to just be an antiquated old navy. And now they're fielding up-to-date modern equipment. You know, some better than the United States. They have rail guns. They have lasers. They have hypersonic cruise missiles now on their destroyers, which can shoot twice as far and can see twice as far as any U.S. destroyer or frigate or ship that the U.S. has. This is crazy, right? This is why they see China as a pressing threat, because China is in the position that America was in after World War II. The economy, the military, the rising political clout. America cannot get out of this mind state that she must dominate. That it is some God-given right that she has to dominate and dictate and tell everybody else what to do. And at the same time, she presents herself as a beacon of freedom, hope around the world, and that everybody should have the right to develop according to their own way. But when your way is in contradiction to what she thinks is right for you, then she'll demonize you, victimize you, and then she'll militarize the space around you and then wage war against you. So I want you to listen to this, okay? Because this is very important why Trump started talking about the dollar. And it's like losing a war. We lost the dollar as the world reserve currency. Therefore, we must threaten it. We must destroy BRICS and all of this stuff. This is the reason why he's saying this, okay? Pay close attention. And it also, before I play it, it also shows you the lunacy up in there. Because BRICS comprises, and this is not the partners of BRICS or the upcoming new members of BRICS. This is the members of BRICS. They comprise 55% of the global population, right? Their economies exceed all of the G7 or the Western or the Anglo nations of the West. And yet America and the UK and the West still thinks that they have the right to dictate, dominate, and interfere. I want you to listen to this.
BRICS continues to grow and grow. Every few weeks, basically, there's a new announcement of another country that has been admitted to BRICS, which is a Global South-led organization that now represents more than 40% of the global economy and over half of the world's population. The latest news is that as of the 17th of January, Nigeria has been accepted as a partner country in BRICS, which means it's on the path toward full membership in the near future. This is very important because Nigeria has the largest population in Africa, and it has the 6th largest population on Earth. The Brazilian government announced this news because in 2025, Brazil is the chair of BRICS. There's a rotating chairmanship every single year. In 2023, it was South Africa. In 2024, it was Russia. This year, it is Brazil. And Brazil has succinctly summarized the goals of BRICS being two main goals: strengthening South-South cooperation and reforming global governance. So when you hear Western critics of BRICS claim that this organization has so many internal problems and they don't have unity and they don't have a common goal, Brazil has constantly stated what those two common goals are: deepening South-South cooperation, economic and political integration of the formerly colonized countries of the Global South, which represent the global majority, and the other goal, reforming institutions of global governance. That means reforming the United Nations, and in particular, the UN Security Council, which is dominated by the Western powers. And above all, it means reforming international financial institutions. In 2024, when Russia was chair of BRICS, it published a comprehensive report detailing its plans, BRICS's plans, to transform the international monetary and financial system. I wrote a lengthy report about that, and I have a video about that, which I will link to in the description below, summarizing the main points of this report. But the gist of it is that BRICS countries have a common economic goal in challenging the dominance of the US dollar and Washington's dominance over the international financial system. And they have proposed as an alternative to US dollar dominance what they call a multi-currency system through what is known as the BRICS Cross-Border Payment Initiative. They're already using their own national currencies to trade with each other, trying to de-dollarize their trade. And they're trying to create new institutions to de-dollarize the reserves they hold in their central banks, holding new assets and also simply gold, because many of these countries are afraid that the US could seize the dollar-dominated assets they hold in their reserves, which is what the US did to Russia and Venezuela and Iran and Afghanistan. And they're even setting up exchanges for commodities so they can settle trade imbalances in commodities like gold or wheat or minerals. And so many countries in the Global South are trying to join BRICS precisely because they want to create a new international financial order, one that is no longer completely dominated by the Western colonial powers that colonized much of the world and still treat many Global South countries as neo-colonies today. So now that Nigeria has been officially accepted into BRICS as a partner, there are 9 BRICS partner countries and 10 full members of BRICS for a total of 19 as of the 19th of January. I created a map showing membership, which you can see here, and I regularly update this map, which you can find the latest updated version on geopoliticaleconomy.com. The previous edition, which was announced just 2 weeks before Nigeria was admitted, was Indonesia. Indonesia has the world's 4th biggest population and the 7th largest economy. And Indonesia's addition as a member of BRICS was also deeply symbolic because Indonesia was one of the founders of the non-aligned movement and previously had hosted the Bandung Conference in 1955, which brought together countries in Africa and Asia that were seeking independence from Western colonialism. So many ways in the 21st century, you can see BRICS as following in the footsteps of the non-aligned movement and the Bandung Conference of the 20th century. BRICS is the 21st century version of that. And again, at the core of BRICS's international movement is the attempt to de-dollarize the international financial system, to create alternatives to the dominance of the US dollar. So the 10 full members of BRICS are now Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, after which BRICS is named. They founded this organization back in 2009 as BRIC, and then South Africa joined in 2010. And then 5 new members were added: Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the UAE. They joined in 2024. And then now there are 9 BRICS partners as of 2025. Those include Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda, and Uzbekistan. If you look at a list of the top 20 most populous countries on Earth, 10 of them are now in BRICS, including Nigeria has the 6th largest population, which was over 230 million people as of 2024. That makes it the most populous country on the African continent. So if you combine together the population of all 19 BRICS members and partners, together they represent more than 4.3 billion people, which represents 54.6% of the entire population of the world. This is according to data from the International Monetary Fund, which I used here to create these charts. There are different sources on the size of the world population that differ a little bit, of course, but I typically use the IMF data because despite all of the many problems with the IMF as an institution, its data is publicly available and very useful, and it's also updated very regularly. So the IMF had the world population in 2024 at 7.92 billion people. The BRICS countries are now 4.3 billion people. That means they represent 54.6% of the entire world population. The addition of Nigeria into BRICS is also important because Nigeria has one of the fastest growing populations on Earth. India, one of the founding members of BRICS, which has the world's largest population, has the fastest growing population. From 2024 to 2037, it's expected that there will be 147 million people born in India. But in second place is Nigeria, with 65 million people born in Nigeria in the next decade and a half or so. And if you look at the list of the top 10 countries with the fastest growing populations, not as a percentage, but as a gross number, half of those countries are now in BRICS: India, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Egypt. So BRICS cannot be ignored. It represents the majority of the world population, and Nigeria in particular is pretty symbolic because the largest city in Nigeria, Lagos, is expected to emerge as the world's top megacity by the end of the 21st century. In fact,
now, there's a lot to that. That's a lot to unpack. First of all, China says that even though that they are the manufacturer to the world, Africa is the manufacturer to China. And that's why there's a lot of investment in Africa. A lot of people don't talk about that. Just like I think it was Shelley or Holly says that Burkina Faso has a car industry. Yeah, I know they do, right? Nice cars too, right? As soon as they kick the French out, less than 2 years, they got a car industry going, right? So this shows you the problem with colonialism, right? But I want to keep going along this line because we're seeing the rise of BRICS. Without Africa, Europe ceased to be a relevant power because now Ukraine is in Russia's sphere again, and what resources it had is now under Russia's control, and Africa is moving towards independence, and West Asia is seeing the hypocrisy in America and Europe. So now they are stuck following America's lead, and America double-crossed Europe after sanctioning Russia's oil and gas, then saying that we got you covered, and then as soon as they put on all of those tariffs and sanctions, America doubled and tripled the price of liquefied gas to their so-called allies. Man, a friend in need, right? So, but the Europeans have to take this. Why? Because the economy, see, a lot of people don't understand this. The economies are tied so close to the U.S. economy, especially the dollar. But what's more important, as I continue to tell you all, is that there's a flight of gold out of the United States, and there's a flight of gold out of London. And London is the place where all of the gold is marketed. The London Gold Exchange is where the pricing for gold is. That's why I tell people, when you talk about American empire, you cannot talk about American empire without talking about Britain or the UK. Because if Britain controls the gold prices, right, and you have the U.S. Gold Exchange tied to the London Gold Exchange, not the other way around, and you have the New York Stock Exchange tied to the London Stock Exchange, not the other way around, right, then that means these two are one and the same, and they're in bed. They're one and the same, and they're in bed. And what benefits one benefits the other. If one sneezes, the other one gets a cold. If one passes gas, the other one has diarrhea. And so the EU, which was a project of the United States, and Trump is screaming about the EU was put together to fleece the United States, even though it was a project of the United States and the UK. All of those economies are tied. The sterling pound is tied to the US dollar. The euro is tied to the US dollar. If one goes, the other goes. But it would hit them even harder without resources. So that's why they are forced to go along these escapades. Because Europe has little to no resources, natural resources. And what little they have is not enough to cover the whole of Europe. All right? So I want you to get that understanding. So now, let's go a little further. This is what Alex Traynor has to say on the matter, okay? Pay close attention.
I think that Moody's downgrade is probably correct, negative, right? Because the United States government today has surpassed $33 trillion in debt. It's paying more than $1 trillion in interest on that debt every year. We're just talking about the federal government's debt. Mm-hmm. If you add the private debts, households and businesses, you reach something like 90 plus, I think, $91 trillion in debt. These are absurd. These are preposterous numbers. And, an economy whose GDP is less than $33 trillion per year cannot have a top credit rating. That's just the boring math of it. But if you went to your bank and you were spending 3 times what you were earning, they wouldn't give you credit.
Right. That is exactly the example that I was using right before you joined us. I was telling the people, I was like, you try to go to the bank and you were spending 5, 10, 20, 30 times what you're putting in. They would send you out the door selling and tell you don't come back this way until you can get your debt under control. Why do you think that America continues to, because this is connected, the debt crisis and her provocative actions around the globe, why aren't there any adults in Washington, D.C., and why don't they look at the entire geopolitical situation and say, maybe if I pull back and stop antagonizing everybody, the very people who I'm dependent upon for their generosity to buy my debt, maybe they will buy more debt. But if I continue to antagonize them, they're going to sell the debt.
Well, that's centuries-old stories of empires. For you and I, and for any ordinary person and ordinary business in the country, and I'm not in the United States, but the same principle applies everywhere. we could all get along really well, trade with one another, because there's stuff I would like to buy from American businesses, and there is stuff that American people would like to buy from, France, Croatia, China, wherever. And in that case, we could simply live in peace and trade with each other. And, if somebody spent too much and produced too little, their currency would get punished, their credit rating would get punished, exporting countries would be hesitant to, export their goods to them because they would worry about getting paid and so forth. And then that country would have to maybe tighten the belt and improve their production or reduce their imports, and basic economic policy. The problem is that what you and I think about these things and the way you and I would deal with these problems is not the same when it comes to the imperial factions, which are basically the very narrow networks of powers that are clustered around the global banking cartel and the mega corporations that have grown up around them. Now, banking and empire usually go together, particularly the kind of banking and the kind of monetary system that we have in place today. And I'll try to explain in as simple terms as I can think of it. Basically, today's monetary system is, we have fiat currencies backed by nothing other than, trust and confidence. And we have fractional reserve banking, okay? All the money that goes into circulation represents debt. If there were no debt in the system, there would be no money in the system, zero, not a single dollar. And so for any money to be in circulation, somebody has to go into debt. Debt becomes assets on the books of the banks. So the banks, your debt is banks' assets. Your liability, right? That's the bank's assets. Now, given that the debt has to be paid back with interest, but only the principal goes into circulation, the whole system functions like a large Ponzi scheme, because the only way that you can pay your debt plus interest is to earn it from other people who have to go into debt for whatever reason, for consumption, for mortgages, for business development, for infrastructure development, whatever. But people have to keep going into debt, and the system is only stable for as long as it grows. So that's why we have this imperative of always growing the economy, the GDP growth. Even when everybody's satisfied, everybody has everything they need, and maybe they only need to make minor purchases, there's always this imperative for the whole system to grow so that people go more into debt and buy more crap so that more crap can be produced. And the government has to keep going deeper and deeper into debt. That's symptomatic. That's across the world. Every government, every nation that has this monetary system in place. And that's pretty much all nations in the world today. Now,
that was we're talking about the monetary scheme, and we're trying to tell you why their threats are being thrown out, specifically and especially against BRICS nations. Now, I saw one of you guys say, I believe it was Michael N. Let me see. Yeah, he says Algeria deserves membership. They stopped France from entering Niger. True. They were invited. They have been invited to join the BRICS. As a matter of fact, they have not responded yet. But three more nations have been invited as observers. One is and to join BRICS. One is Algeria. The other one is Turkey and Vietnam. So I wanted to answer that. I didn't want you to think I was overlooking it when I saw it. Okay. But again, we're looking at the desperation of the empire. When the empire starts losing, they have to recalibrate. They have to rest. They have to rearm because they have to focus on the most pressing threat. What did the secretary say? Matter of fact, hold on one second. Let me pull it up real quick. Give me a second, everybody. Let me pull this up because I want you to hear what he has to say. U.S. China. Pull this up real quick to show you just how easy it is to pull this stuff up. So I pulled this up, and I know it's on one of these things. Give me 1 second. We do this live in real time to show you that there's no excuse for you being lazy. There's no excuse for you buying what they're selling you when you have at your disposal with the click of a finger on a button. You can pull these things up. So I believe on RT, the War Secretary brought up this about China. Let me go down a little bit because I just saw the War Secretary somewhere. And we're going to talk about Musk some more on another show too. This guy right here, he's not what y'all think he is, all right? I just want you to understand something. Hey, there it is. Boom. Told you. With just putting in China, U.S. or U.S. China, RT comes up. This is what was written by the War Secretary, the new War Secretary. And please hit the like button. It doesn't cost you a thing. I didn't ask you to donate or do anything. I just asked you to hit the like button. All right. China is main defense priority for U.S., according to the Pentagon. Washington should confront rising threats while securing its own borders, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth believes. The U.S. intends to refocus its military priorities to confronting China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific, which is the Asia-Pacific. But the Western world now wants to brand it the Indo-Pacific as to push out the Asian part as to make it seem like China is a foreigner in his own area. Okay, but it goes and says, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth stated on Wednesday, speaking in Brussels at a gathering of countries that back Ukraine, the newly appointed U.S. Secretary of Defense signaled a significant policy shift. Remember what I told you? Rest, recalibrate, and rearm. This is a part of the shift. They cannot fight China and Russia. So people think that they're going to go right into fighting China in a war. Man, listen to me good. I want you to understand something. Don't lose focus of Iran. They are going to go to war with Iran because they believe that that may be the quickest way to undermine both Russia and China, because Iran is the underbelly of both of them. Let me say that again. Iran is the underbelly of both of those, and if they can win that prize of Iran, then they will have both nations pretty much surrounded. So they're going to go to war with Iran. Why do you think that Rafik Hariri was assassinated over a decade ago in Lebanon? So as to put pressure on the Assad government to remove its troops out of Lebanon so that Israel will have free flight over Lebanon, so that they can target Syrian territory, so that they can also from the northern part in Turkey and from their eastern flank in Jordan, they can shoot in influx of terrorists so that they can destabilize it and eventually overthrow Assad by putting pressure on the economy. I want you to understand something. When the terrorists was fighting Assad, they were going after air defense bases first. America didn't go into Syria when the air defense bases were all across the country. Why would that be strategic for terrorists when they don't have air defense? I mean, an airplane or air force. Why would the first thing they attack are the air bases and try to overrun the air bases by human wave after human wave? That is to compromise the sovereignty of Syria so that the United States could then fly into Syria to cover their soldiers on the ground, the special forces that they had already inserted in Syria. And they finally got their wish with the overthrow of Assad. And that's one of the things on the one of these think tanks website. I forget the think tank. I was reading it a few days ago. But I want you to listen to this. They moved on Assad. They weakened it. And they sanctioned him. And they every year they sanctioned him and they weakened him. Israel would bomb. America would bomb. America bribed the Kurds. America used debt to seize a third of Syria and the strategically important oil and gas as to deprive the government of the much needed revenue. to pay the soldiers and to continue to keep the society as a viable, independent nation. And remember that Syria was one of the few nations, just like Libya, that had no central bank tied to the West. And all of that turned around with the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. The central bank of the of Western style was inputted, and the central bank of Western style is now in Syria, right? And now they have a clear pathway because Israel went right after that and bombed all the air defense bases as to prevent any legacy from Assad of stopping any flyovers from Israeli warplanes if they decided to go through Syria, to go through Iraq, to bomb Iran. You think that was all done by accident? Stop it. Let's go further. Strategic realities require Washington to focus on securing its own borders and countering threats from Beijing. What threat from Beijing? Beijing doesn't have any bases on the U.S. borders. What threat? The threat of being outpaced and usurped in authority in Asia. America believes that she has the inherent right to dominate every area of land, water, and air across the globe. And if she can't dominate it, then you're a threat. You present a threat to her because that means that she can't implement her policies that she wants at a drop of a dime. So you become a threat to her. China is not threatening to overrun America. China is not threatening to bomb America, to sanction America unless America sanctions China or bombs China. So how is that a threat? America is setting up bases all around China's periphery, but they say it's a China threat. America is moving military weapons and troops to China's neighborhood to confront China, they say, to deter China from war. Well, if I had a problem with you and I moved in your neighborhood, I came from another state and moved in your neighborhood and set up guns and bazookas on your doorstep, who would be the one presenting a threat? Huh? It would be me, right? But in this Orwellian, or this, what I like to call, bizarro doublespeak, bizarro world, Bizarro was the back with Superman. This is what we see. Where right is wrong, wrong is right, in is out is in, up is down, and down is up. And the media, including most alternative, go with the flow and run with that crap. Let's look a little further. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland, he says, stressing we must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. So you have the right to secure your borders, but China doesn't. China is the foremost challenge, he explained. Why? Why is China? Is China threatening to go to war with the United States? No, China say we want a win-win situation. Why is China the foremost threat? Because China is outstripping America in every area that she once dominated in. She's the largest trade partner to everybody. She's innovative. She's graduating 2, 3, 4 times as many engineers and scientists than the U.S. and her allies combined. She's the number one naval power. She's the number one army. I think they said 2025 to 2027, she'll be the largest air force. She has the fastest supercomputers. While America is still refining her 5th grade warplane, China struts out two 6th generation warplanes. 2. China is the largest trade partner to Latin America, Central America, the Caribbean. China is the largest trade partner to Africa. What's the largest trade partner to Europe until America intervened? It's the largest trade partner to ASEAN, the Asian nations grouping. That's why China, when you ban them with the chips, China comes out with a phone better than yours, with its own store, after it was banned off Google Play Store and Apple. A phone that was better and cheaper. China's EV market is better. China has EVs that make Elon Musk look crazy. Google this stuff. Go to YouTube and look at their market. They have the largest railways, fastest railways in the world. They're exporting that technology around the world. Win-win situations. These things America and the West had a monopoly on, and they no longer have a monopoly or an advantage on. So not being able to threaten China, to sanction China without ramifications is the threat that America is talking about. Not able to be able to cower China is the threat that is pressing for America. We must be able to do this. What did Trump say? We have to keep the dollar as the world reserve currency. What did Rubio say? Or else we can't sanction nations. Right? Isn't that what he said in that clip? You don't believe me? Let me go back to that clip real quick. Do I still have that clip up? I think I might have removed that clip. No, here it is.
Look, it goes beyond these things. That just today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Now, this drive toward
pressing threat. Let's go to something real quick, okay? Give me a second. Okay. The word pressing, P-R-E-S-S-I-N-G, according to Google's dictionary, is an adjective. It means of a problem, need, or situation requiring quick or immediate action or attention. Urgent, critical, crucial, acute, desperate, serious, grave, or dire. Why would I put this up here? Listen to what Rubio said. This is why you understand that it is a grave or pressing threat. Listen to his words again, and we're going to run this back one more time. Just listen to what he said. Give me 1 second.
Look, it goes beyond these things. That just today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Now, this drive toward de-dollarization.
Or so, right? He said 5 years at most. They are creating a secondary economy outside of trading the dollar. When this happens, they will have no more influence because they won't be able to sanction the nations. That's the pressing threat that he's talking about. That's what Hegseth is talking about. That's what Trump is talking about. That's what all of them are scared of. That the nations are now bolting on the dollar. And without the dollar as the world reserve currency, you rob the American and British Empire of the life's blood. Because you cannot fund an empire if you do not have the world reserve currency or you don't have the financial wherewithal to keep it going, to pay the people, to keep the civilization going outside of the funding of the military. You can't keep an empire going. So this is what's pressing them because China is supplanting them and surpassing them in every area which they dominated in. And so this brings us to what Brian Barletic and I talked about, and I want you to pay close attention to this. Well, do you think that there, because I talked to Larry Johnson earlier today, I had a show with him earlier today, and a lot of people are of the belief that Trump is putting America under new management and shifting everything. But I asked the question, do you believe that it's a little too late because of all the antagonizing of the world and because of the impossible debt burden that America has? Because it seems like to me they jumped off the wagon, pointing the finger at everybody. It's everybody's fault. It's Panama's fault. It's Mexico's fault. It's Canada's fault. It's Greenland's fault. It's China's fault. It's this fault. It's that fault. But it's never America's fault for the situation that she finds herself in. It reminds me of as little kids, the little kid, it's always somebody else's fault and it's never their fault. And they can't understand why people are saying, are you sure you're not to blame for it? Don't you think that regardless of administration, that they're acting like little children by blaming everybody else for the position that America now finds herself in, especially when they start talking about unfair trade practices, and nobody has had more of an unfair advantage when it comes to trade, commerce, and finance than the United States has in the last 100 years.
Absolutely. I was just listening to Vice President Vance accuse China of stealing American jobs. China stole absolutely nothing. All of those jobs were voluntarily shipped over to China to take advantage of then very cheap labor, lax regulations, zero environmental regulations, workplace safety regulations. They took advantage of that. And now that not only has China risen, they have their own companies now out competing the United States, out competing the U.S. inside China, out competing the U.S. all around the planet. So what America is actually upset about, and what they will never admit, is the fact that they are incapable of competing fairly with China. And when you really think about it, it doesn't even make sense. China is so much larger than the U.S., has such a larger industrial base, world-class infrastructure the U.S. would take decades to catch up with. Just the high-speed rail network alone, just mind-boggling. If you haven't been to China, it's almost impossible to explain in words the scale everything is in China. And so it doesn't even make sense for the U.S. to try to compete with China. It would be like I'm trying to think of an example here. It would be like the UK complaining that its economy, its industry, its military isn't as large as the United States. It doesn't make any sense. It is a smaller country, smaller population, geographically smaller. Everything about it is smaller. So why do you think you would have more power and influence than the U.S.? Doesn't make any sense. And this is something the U.S. has to come to grips with. This is reality. You are a smaller country than China. You are going to have less power than China, and you need to accept that because that's reality. And if you are going to rail against reality, then you will have all kinds of very bad consequences down the road. I really don't think that Trump is reorganizing America and putting it under new administration. I was just listening to him talk about how there needs to be maximum pressure on Iran, that they're not allowed to have nuclear weapons. If they assassinate senior leaders in the American government, the same way the U.S. has already assassinated senior leaders in the Iranian government, they will obliterate all of Iran. That sounds very much like the deep state that he campaigned against on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So listen, and we're going to bring it to a close, but I want to finish this little reading of what Hagseth says, and then I want to play the last clip of the night, okay? So you guys bear with me. Thank you for being with me almost 2.5 hours. I wanted to give you a show because I had not been able to give you a show in a few days, but I think we got one tomorrow, and then I don't know, sometime this week we got a premium show also, or a premium video coming up. So I'm trying to give it to you. I'm one person, but I'm doing my best, okay? So you guys bear with me, all right? So it says, the United States faces consequential threats to our homeland, he said, stressing we must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. China is the foremost challenge, he explained, describing it as a peer competitor with both the capability and intent to threaten U.S. national interests in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, this is the question I ask for anybody. Just anyone that's looking around. How can America's interest in the Asia Pacific be more of a priority than China's interest in the Asia Pacific when China is an Asia Pacific country? I'm asking. And China is an Asian country, and America is not. America is a Pacific power, but she's not an Asian power. That's why they switched the name from Asia Pacific to Indo-Pacific, okay? But if China is an Asian power and America is then pivoting to Asia, who is the threat? Because China didn't pivot to the Pacific. America is pivoting to Asia. And this is what he said. I told you, Bizarro World. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific. How in the hell are you deterring it by building up weapons on somebody's borders and threatening them and arming a province that you recognize to be a part of China, and also trying to upset regional areas like the areas with the Uyghurs and all of that stuff? How in the world can you be not seen as a threat to peace and security to China, but China is the threat to you, and China is not arming the secessionist movements in Texas and in Oregon and California and around the country in the United States? But you're doing it there. China didn't put a base in Hawaii and tell the Hawaiians, we will help you attain your independence, even though, according to history now, this is not me, Hawaii was brought to yield under U.S. military power. It wasn't that they wanted to be in the U.S. The U.S. forced the Queen of Hawaii to abdicate and to make Hawaii a territory of the United States. This is not me saying it. You can read it. China is not backing the secession of Hawaii, but America is doing it with Taiwan. But America says that they are positioning armaments and weapons and missiles and warships and destroyers, not builder uppers, but destroyers on China's periphery and the China's coast. But China is the pressing threat. Man, stop this Orwellian doublespeak. And it says, the U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. Deterrent, no, coercion. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to coerce China. You're trying to cower them to your way and your will. But in closing, I want you to hear this video, okay? This short little video. This is Kiji Noe again, all right? And we talk about what if the U.S. starts a war with China. And I'll be right back after this to bring the show to a close. And I want to thank every one of you for being here with me this long, okay? So I want you to listen to this, okay? Pay close attention. Now, the last question of the night to you is this. If war breaks out, well, we know, but I have to pose this question to you, because America is so dependent on China's export to the United States, and 93 to 95% of all goods on U.S. shelves and all the stores come from China or a subsidiary of China. When war breaks out and China starts an embargo on the United States, what will the economic scene look like? Because all hell should break loose, because there will be massive bankruptcy, massive unemployment, massive store closures, scarce food, scarce items. Where would this take America at home when war breaks out in Asia between the two superpowers?
You know, let's just think about that a little bit. You know, I gave you a small idea when I said that, you know, there are 1,500, almost 1,600 companies that supply parts that the United States uses for air-to-air missiles or air-to-land missiles, right? So that gives you a sense. That's in a sector where they don't want that dependency. But if you think about everything else, you're absolutely right. The United States cannot live without China. There's a fundamental sense in which we are like conjoined twins, right? And if you separate the conjoined twins, you have to understand that it's the other twin, China, which has the beating heart and the liver and the brain, right? Right. So what's going to happen to the United States? That's exactly as as anybody could predict. Our economy is going to crash. Everything is going to be difficult. You think of your average car. Your average car has 30,000 components in it. A lot of those components come from China. Think of your jet, has 300,000 parts. A lot of those components come from China. So if you cut China out of the picture, yes, we have to be ready for chaos. We have to be ready for supply chains to break down completely. And during COVID, we got a small taste of what that was like. Not enough chips. We don't have cars, right? Building materials are short. Everything is short. But simply the fact is that the United States, in its kind of monopoly stage of economic development, decided that it was going to financialize everything. What I mean by that is that the U.S. corporations decided that they were just going to ask people to give them money or demand money from people and not make anything useful. This is what we call a rentier economy. You just collect rents, right? Well, how do you collect rents? Essentially, you collect rents because you have the force to coerce other people to pay you rent, but you're still not creating anything productive. They sometimes say that, GM is a finance company masquerading as a car manufacturer, right? I mean, they were making more money at one point from their loans than they were from selling cars. So there's a way in which the US has financialized its economy in incredibly non-productive ways. And therefore, it needs to have a productive substrata that's providing it everything it needs. And so if it decides to go to war against its productive subalterns, against its engine, right? Against, you're going to kill the goose, right? That lays the golden eggs. How is that going to work out for you? It's not. It's an act of madness. It's an act of suicide. And so that is what the ruling imperial elite have on the agenda. Why do they think this way? They don't think. They just believe. They're true believers. They believe that they are engaged in a war of good and evil. As Reinhold Niebuhr was the kind of architect of the Cold War, he said that we have to risk the end of the world in order to prevent the rise of, the global South, of, socialist movements. They honestly believe that. They really, when you hear them talk to themselves, they actually say these things to themselves. And that is what's so frightening, that, this imperial elite is so out of touch with reality and so stuck on its ideological crusade that it would rather see the end of the world than the end of their power, because the end of their power for them is the end of their world. It's not the end of the world, but it's the end of their world as they see it. And they would rather end the world than let that happen.
And you see how things work out. I didn't even know all of that was in the video, but that was the last video of the night. You see how God works. God is always good. I want to take the time out to thank each and every one of you for joining me again on the most powerful platform for truth anywhere on God's green earth. This has been a true news rundown with your friend, your brother, and your ally, Rashid. I want to thank you all. And remember to do right by others, not because there's some material gain in it or because there's some accolades or some kind of recognition in it. Do right by others because it's the right and humane thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching, remember that God Almighty is always watching. He sits high, but he looks low. Remember that. Know that I love each and every one of you if you love truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. And until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you. We're out of here. Peace.
Walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. But what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a